Finally, the government can stimulate the economy through greater deficit spending. There are two ways the government have controlled the economy. First, through monetary policy, which is controlled by the Federal Reserve Board, or FRB. The chairman of the FRB can stimulate spending and therefore increase jobs or decrease inflation. The Phillips curve suggests that whenever there is high unemployment, there is a low inflation, and vice versa. By increasing or decreasing the amount of money through selling and buying of bonds, increasing or decreasing the required money banks must keep in reserve, and through adjusting the interest rates. The lower the interest rates, the more people will take out loans and buy goods, thereby creating more jobs, but also increasing inflation. Legislators can create jobs by increasing government spending, often by engaging in deficit spending. This is called the Keynesian model. Unregulated capitalism experiences booms and busts. Many people have money and so buy goods and services. Businesses want to increase profits, so they hire more, providing more goods and offering more services. Soon they overproduce and nobody is buying the surplus goods. There are massive layoffs. People, fearing the dwindling economy, are reluctant to spend, which exacerbates the problem. When the surplus goods are consumed, often sold at a loss, or spoils, then there is a recovery. The cycle repeats itself. During the Great Depression, the Keynesian economics was introduced to the president. The problem is that unemployed do not spend. And when people do not spend, unemployment increases. To stop this cycle without waiting for the economy to hit rock bottom, Keynesian economics recommends that the government increase employment through government work projects, roads, bridges, buildings, parks, etc. Once people are employed, they spend, stimulating the economy and creating more jobs. When people are employed, they pay taxes, and the government can pay for all the projects. It appeared to be a win-win situation, except what if the state does not generate the revenue it needs to pay for the projects? The history of the budget is interesting. The Constitution grants the power of the purse to Congress. That is, originally Congress decides how much is spent and on what. The power of the purse was one of the many checks among the three branches. For example, Theodore Roosevelt wanted to advertise the new U.S. Navy by taking it around the world. He was trying to flex America's muscles, at a time when America was not considered a superpower. To counter this expensive show of force, Congress threatened not to fund such an expedition. Roosevelt, being a clever leader, retorted that he will take the fleet abroad and it will be up to Congress to bring it back. Until the 1920s, Congress controlled the budget, but not very well. First, federal spending was minimal. Most social services, if any, fell under the jurisdictions of state and local governments. Indeed, for the last part of the 19th century and the first part of the 20th century, there was no federal income tax. In 1884 and 1885, when it was imposed, the Supreme Court found a national income tax unconstitutional. Only after the 16th Amendment to the Constitution in 1913 was income tax collected for the first time since the Civil War. Needless to say, the budget was not as complex as it is today. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid constitute most of federal spending. All three programs did not exist until the second half of the century. As federal spending increased due to income tax and progressive politics, budgetary planning was spread among a number of congressional committees. The process was disorganized and wasteful. In 1921, Congress passed the Budget and Accounting Act, granting the President greater control of the budget. The goal was to consolidate budgetary planning in the hands of one group or one person. Agencies within the executive branch must request annual funding from the President. The approved requests are sent to Congress as a single document for further consideration. The President thus served as a gatekeeper. Initially, the Bureau of the Budget, or BOB, assisted the President with the budget. Today, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, assists the President. The OMB consults with the Council of Economic Advisors, or CEA, and the Department of Treasurer. The OMB serves the President, and to what extent the President follows the recommendation of the OMB is his or her prerogative. For example, President Nixon would often ignore the advice of the OMB. Recall that there are organizational values, and the OMB, and for that matter the BOB, tended to try to limit spending. Most presidents do not scrutinize over budgetary nuances, except for Bill Clinton. In 1974, Congress gained some of its control over the budget that it gave away in 1921. They passed the Budget and Impoundment Control Act, which established budgetary committees in the House and Senate, and the Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, the legislative counterpart to the executive OMB. The CBO brought some control back to Congress over the budget. However, it also created more conflict between the President and Congress.